Okay, I'd like to introduce Kendall Davis with PRA Health. She's our first speaker of the morning.
Good morning, everybody. So I will do my best to get us a little bit back on track. So if I speak really quickly, I apologize, but I'll be here for a while today, so please feel free to ask me any questions whenever you see me. Is this on? It's not working. So my background a little bit, so I work for a company called PRA Health Sciences. We're a CRO, which is a contract research organization, and it's a huge company. I think globally we have about 15,000 employees, but I work in the Center for Rare Diseases, which is about 6 people. So I work on a really small team, and I'm focused on patient advocacy and engagement, and what we do is we build clinical trials. And so my role is really to help support the companies that are looking to build trials to bring therapies to patients faster and make sure that, we're really incorporating every aspect of the patient's life and experience to make sure that these trials are designed correctly and being executed in a way that's going to bring therapies to the market as quickly as we can. Disclaimer, the views in this presentation are mine. They don't necessarily reflect PRA Health Sciences, but if I have anything to say about it, they reflect PRA's views pretty accurately. I previously worked for Global Genes, so I've been doing rare disease advocacy for quite a while. I haven't given this presentation in a little bit, so I'm pretty excited. And Ashley Yee, who's here from Global Genes, has seen this presentation a couple of times. I will reference them a lot because they have really fantastic resources, so bear with me. To talk about rare disease advocacy, these are kind of the points I want to talk about today. What is it? Where is it needed? Where, from a personal standpoint or from like a collective family unit, where am I going to be advocating for myself or my loved ones? What kind of advocacy exists? And how do you get involved and how do you get started? And I will tell you, you guys are probably going to feel like a lot of this is redundant because over the past couple of days, I've just been really listening and taking in a lot of what you guys have been talking about doing. And you guys are already advocating like crazy for yourselves, for your community, for rare disease. So if a lot of this sounds redundant, I apologize, but it's pretty incredible to see just and hear what you guys have been doing. And maybe not even realizing that it's really, you're like really deeply embedded in advocacy. This is something that was said to me a really long time ago when I was at Global Genes and has resonated with me on so many levels. So I think our friend Carrie, right? She was like, very few people get into rare disease advocacy because it's their passion. They do it to survive. And I think about this a lot, and I think about what survival in this means. And I think I've met so many people that are advocating for themselves, for their loved ones, for the survival of their communities, for a memory, for a drug development process, a clinical trial, making sure that it survives so that we get drugs to market. So this can really resonate, and I think that people really kind of have to find a place where they feel like the type of advocacy they're doing really resonates. But when you find that, hold on to it and go with it, because I'm telling you, you can change the world. So living with a rare disease, there's a lot of perceptions versus what kind of the reality is. And I think this is a great place to start because you all probably know this far better than I do. It's really difficult to get someone to understand what it means to have a rare disease or have a child or a loved one with a rare disease, and having to explain it all the time can get really frustrating. But when you learn how to do it well and when you can get that kind of concise soundbite, it can be really powerful. And so a lot of times, we see the perception as, okay, so people with rare diseases are probably in the hospital a lot, they probably take a lot of medications. It's like a very, very lonely, not a lot of people have these diseases, it's this kind of isolated space. But in reality, there's over 7,000 rare diseases. If you put everybody that had a rare disease together, we make up the 3rd largest country. So it's actually a hugely powerful voice. And this community is incredible. And you guys really do belong to a really large group of people fighting for the same thing, fighting for awareness around rare disease, for therapies, to get developed, and so that we can see some changes and, improvement of quality of life and bringing everybody together. So the reality is you actually exist in a much larger community, and your voice is probably a lot louder than it seems sometimes. So this is a really fun exercise that if we had a little more time, I would make somebody do with me, but this is just kind of something to think about. If you really had to explain why advocating for rare disease or why it's important, like why someone should care that you or your loved one or someone you know has a rare disease, like what would you say? And this is kind of a fun exercise because depending on who you're talking to, this message might be really different. And so this is just kind of a slide to talk through. If you wanted to create an elevator speech or really think about, how to really impact and kind of drive home a message, think about, kind of what's the bottom line? Who are you talking to? If you're trying to advocate for legislation, you're going to want to direct a message much differently than if you're trying to talk to a doctor or researcher. Think about why they should care. So just using a legislator as an example, if 1 in 10 people are impacted by a rare disease, think about how many of their constituents are going to be impacted by rare disease. That's probably a number that will catch their attention because all elected officials want, votes. And so if you go in there and say, hey, you live in a city with 7 million people, it means 700,000 people are impacted by a rare disease. That's a large population of people that might be voting for you, something like that. So always think about why they should care. Be yourself. This can get really hard because I know sometimes it can be difficult to articulate from a really emotional space, like why this is important and why people should care and why you need resources, like why we need researchers or funding or whatever it is. But really be yourself. The most impactful and memorable interactions that you're going to have are going to be because something very authentic was said and you portrayed an aspect of how this impacts your life that really resonates with somebody else. And be confident. You guys are experts in your space, in your lives, in your loved ones' lives. Nobody knows this better than you, and you should own that. That's going to be probably one of your most powerful assets. And always end strong. If you can think of kind of a fun way to get people to remember meeting you or talking to you, it's always going to work in your favor. So what is advocacy? Anybody have a thought as to what advocacy means? Like when you think of the word advocacy, what do you think? Any takers? Ashley? No, sorry. So a lot of people will say, they think about working in government or advocating with legislatures or maybe it's taking some type of action or really raising a voice or rallying a community. And if any of those are what you thought, you were right. Advocacy takes on a ton of different forms and it can look very different and it's going to be very personal to everybody, but at the end of the day, it's really raising awareness for a cause, a community, a person, and trying to move an agenda of progress forward. So from an individual level, there are a couple of different places where you're going to see advocacy as being more needed. And these include with your healthcare teams, at work, in your school, and with your friends and family. And this isn't necessarily an exhaustive list by any means, but when you're talking about having to advocate from a personal level or for somebody that you love, these are kind of the general areas where you see a lot of that a little bit more. So advocating for your healthcare and in becoming an empowered patient, this is something that I think it's very, very difficult to do, but once you do it, I think it makes your relationships with your healthcare providers a lot stronger. And in rare disease, can be really frustrating because a lot of times you just don't have doctors or nurses or healthcare teams that really understand what's going on or what you're going through or how to help you or how to provide resources. So advocating for your health is really just about creating a partnership and a team with your healthcare providers. This is probably not anything that you guys haven't heard or know or hopefully have in existence. This is where the Alliance can come in and be extremely useful. There are tons of resources about how to kind of create these partnerships and situations. Global Genes has some really phenomenal resources. And a lot of times this just looks like asking people how they've developed these teams, how they've, gone about having these conversations with their doctor to actually have a relationship and a partnership that isn't just, kind of someone coming in and telling you what they think or what you should be doing, but really creating an opportunity for you guys to be partners in that decision making, because ultimately it's your health or your child's health or your loved ones, and there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be making decisions together. So again, just always kind of focus on making sure that you're comfortable with the decisions that are being made, that you fully understand what they mean and how they're going to impact you, your child, or your loved ones. Advocacy in the workplace. So this, this doesn't just mean people who are living with a rare disease themselves who are in the workforce, but as a parent or a family member or caregiver for somebody with a rare disease, there's a lot of different things that, you might need to take into consideration with your employer. And when you're advocating for yourself, whether it's, you as a person with a rare disease or yourself as a person caring for somebody with a rare disease, there's a couple things to just keep in mind. First of all, you decide what people know. There's no law, rules, regulations that say, you have to disclose anything. It can be really helpful if you feel comfortable with your boss or your employer, because there might be some accommodations that they can make and, help you with. But at the end of the day, you get to choose who knows what. And knowing your rights, so there are some things, there are some protections in place, and again, there's a couple great resources I'm happy to provide where you can find some of this information. But just really kind of understanding what is afforded to you guys and what types of resources are in existence when kind of trying to navigate working and caring for somebody with a rare disease or having one. Being able to ask for what you need. Again, this comes, I think, a lot of times with being really comfortable with your employer or your boss. But a lot of times companies, we hope that they would be willing to work with you and accommodate things and, kind of help you be able to be an effective employee without having to compromise being a caregiver or, any aspect of your health. And always have a plan just in case, hey, nothing ever goes the way that you think it's going to go. And so always having a plan, maybe somebody at work kind of knowing what's going on. So if you do have to leave or if something comes up, you kind of have a little bit of a plan that you can navigate pretty quickly. Advocacy in schools. So this is a huge one, and this is something that unfortunately is dramatically different depending on where you live in the country and your school systems. I've heard stories about, you heard Bruce yesterday talking about they had a really, really great experience working with their school system. They had a lot of support. We hear stories about basically the exact opposite. And so this, we know parents that have had to advocate in ways that just should never happen for their children in schools. And it can be really, really frustrating. This is probably one of the hardest things you might have to do, but there are a lot of resources. We know, Global Genius, has some really phenomenal connections with people who fight for this on a daily basis and can help you navigate and just understand kind of the basics of what resources are available and what rights you have and what school systems have to do, and then also help navigate how to have those conversations so that the teachers, the facilitators, anybody in the school system can be supporting you at a deeper level so that, your kid has the best experience in school that they can. This is kind of, probably everything I just said, but, really understanding what the needs are going to be for your child or yourself in school, determining what kind of resources and things are available and what you're really going to need, and again, knowing your resources. And please, I'm happy to email you any of these. Ashley can connect you with a bunch of people who do this very, very well all the time, so just don't hesitate. This is, again, a really frustrating process a lot of the time, but there are some resources that can help alleviate a lot of that. Friends and family advocacy, I think, can actually be sometimes the hardest because it's really difficult to explain, especially to people that love you and want to help you, what's going on and how they can help. So again, you decide as a person, as a parent, as a caregiver, really who knows what. And a lot of times I think it's, hopefully a little bit easier to talk to your friends and family a little bit more in depth about what's going on and asking them for help and the resources that you need, but that's not always the case. There are some really phenomenal genetic counselors who can help with this. I'm not sure, hopefully you guys all have had a good experience or know a genetic counselor, but they can be really useful in kind of helping have those conversations with your friends and family or people that are close to you to kind of, explain what's going on so that people just have a better understanding of what you're going through and what you or your child or your loved one needs. And then also how they can help. I mean, I think people, usually family and friends want to help, but being able to tell them how and what's actually helpful, it can kind of be a game changer. Involving people in your efforts, I love this one. So I think sometimes, especially with communities this size, when you're really trying to, do some things or hold advocacy events and fundraise and do stuff like that, it's really hard because in rare disease, we just don't have a huge network. We don't have, the American Cancer Society. And so it falls on the backs of small communities and individuals to be the ones raising awareness, be the ones raising funds. And that's a lot. It's a lot of pressure, but it's just kind of the nature of rare disease right now. But kind of expanding your networks and seeing what people might be able to help with and asking them, to support either you. And if they can't make a financial contribution to a fundraiser, maybe they could do something really cool. Maybe an artist who can create some really awesome posters or come up with some really interesting ideas for how to raise awareness. But just involve people in what you're doing. And I think, when people feel more involved and they feel like they're contributing to helping you in different ways, it deepens that connection and it's going to make it a lot easier for you to just have general support. Know your resources. So these are just some of the, the major ones. Again, the Alliance is probably going to be your greatest resource, and they really are phenomenal. Global Genes, NORD, your local county, state, and federal resources. So this is one that I think gets overlooked a lot. Your county or your local area and your state, there are actually a ton of resources that I don't think people even know about. Ashley and I were talking about this yesterday, and she was telling me that the state of California has a 75-page booklet that outlines every single resource that is available to anybody that has like a medical condition or a disability or anything like that. And I had no idea that existed, and apparently every state has this. And so check out your local resources. Go to the local health department because there might be grants, there might be education support, there might be just local support that you didn't even know existed. And a lot of times it's completely applicable to rare disease. All right, so we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about the different types of advocacy. So again, not a completely exhaustive list, but in the rare disease world, there's 5 major types of advocacy: legislative, nonprofit, community events, local support groups, and advocacy within your friends and family systems. So this is essentially what advocacy by reach looks like. So obviously, legislative advocacy, when you're talking about changing laws or federal programs, that is a huge reach, right? So these are kind of, if you think about it from an upside-down pyramid, your legislative advocacy is going to have the biggest reach. However, it doesn't mean that it's going to have the biggest impact, especially on individual rare disease organizations. So you don't have to think of it as, okay, so if we want to make a big change, we have to advocate, with our government or something like that. That's definitely not the case in rare disease. It just happens to be the more, people are going to hear about it, and hopefully the trickle-down effect will be more people are touched by this type of advocacy. But it's not even remotely the most important. And it really only takes one person to start a movement, and we'll talk about different ways to get involved in different types of advocacy here in a second. And then I have a really quick video hopefully we'll get to. But just remember that you don't have to be doing huge advocacy events or awareness campaigns to really make a change. Sometimes it can be really small, like local events or things that you're doing within in a smaller group that can have the biggest impact on your community and then have that ripple effect in the rare disease space. So again, 5 types we're going to run through. So legislative advocacy, I've touched on this one a couple times, which is actually kind of funny because this is the one I'm by far the worst at. I don't even pretend to be good at talking with my representatives or legislators, but there are some really phenomenal organizations that do this very, very well. If you're interested at all in this type of advocacy, I'd really encourage you to check out the Every Life Foundation. They do some pretty amazing stuff. They do a whole rare disease week and lobby days where they connect you with your representatives and you go in and talk to them about why they need to care about what's happening in healthcare and how it's going to impact you and all their constituents. And so if this type of advocacy speaks to you, there's some really cool ways to get involved in it. So definitely check those out. Talk to Ashley. We at Global Genes, we worked with Every Life a lot, but I'm also happy to connect you with anybody there. And you probably all, kind of know. so research advocacy. So this is my favorite. This is the world I live in. This is what I get to do every day, and I could probably talk about this for 2 more days. But there's a lot of different ways that you can get involved in research, and this is something that in the rare disease space is absolutely vital. I would say this is probably the most important type of advocacy, but I'm also probably biased right now. You can do everything from helping raise money for research, so this is really important. Again, you guys know this. In a lot of rare diseases, you're talking about needing to find basic scientists who are even going to take a look at what's happening in your space, and then they need grants to keep their labs running and yada yada. And so doing things to raise money for research can be a vital component of any organization or community. Raising awareness for research, so if you ever know that there's research being done, raise awareness about it. See if you can find other people that are doing anything similar. And this is something that the Alliance is doing really, really well. But if you're interested in collaborating with them or helping, I'm more than happy to talk to you about how to raise awareness in research. I'll talk to you all day long about it. Participating in registries and natural history studies. So, Pam Vig yesterday was talking about this a little bit, and it's probably something you guys hear a lot, and I can't reiterate the importance. Every time you see a survey, every time there's a registry component that your organization sends out to you, that information is vitally important to the progress of any drug development or research that's happening. Every piece of information that you guys provide becomes a data point that can then be used to really rapidly move a clinical program forward. I can't stress this enough, and I hate surveys. I hate them. I've actually started taking them, just because I preach it so often, so I'll take the, how did your grocery store do today? But I'm telling you, this is probably one of the most important things you can do. And it can be time consuming, and I know that it can be frustrating, and everybody is really, really busy. But if I can encourage you to take the time, and if you don't really know how to get involved or what you can be doing to help your community or your organization or rare disease, this is probably one of the bigger ones. Because nobody has this information except for you. You guys are the only people, you and your healthcare team are the only ones that can provide this anywhere. And when you have a really amazing collective data set, I'm telling you guys, it will change everything about what's happening. It helps companies to be able to develop better therapies, to better targets. It helps them understand inclusion-exclusion criteria. It's transformative. So, again, just as a plug, anytime you see a survey or anything, it is as time-intensive as it can be, it's probably one of the most impactful things you can do. And participate in clinical trials. I, again, will talk to you about clinical trials all day long and what it looks like to participate in them. But, get to know what this means. Hopefully, the Alliance can help you here. Global Genes has some great information about what participating looks like. I'm an open book about this kind of stuff. You'll get my email at the end of this presentation. Happy to talk to you any point in time about what clinical trials are, what the process is, how you can get involved. Even if it doesn't mean actually participating, there are a bunch of different ways, again, you can be involved in this whole process. Okay, support advocacy. So this is kind of, I think, what people, generally think of when you're talking about advocating. This is probably one that people don't really think about because you're doing this all the time, right? So you're supporting each other, you're supporting your community, supporting your family and friends. But this is actually a really, really important component of being an advocate in your space and in rare disease and just for other people. So these are just some examples of ways that you can kind of up-level or increase advocacy efforts regarding support. Start a joint support group. Maybe it's Alagille specific, maybe it's not. Maybe it's chronic disease, maybe it's just for, parents with a kiddo who's been in the hospital. But join a support group, because I guarantee you, even if you don't think that maybe the information or the group of people might be relevant or really helpful for you, you might be really helpful for somebody else too. And sometimes those connections and just being able to support other people can be a type of support for yourself that you just might not realize at first, but it can be really helpful. Attend a family conference. See, you're already doing it. Join or start a care package program. So this could be something, maybe you want to do, or you want to, see, and actually I'm not sure, so if the Alliance does this. Do you guys do this? Okay, just in case. Yeah, but this is a really cool program. A friend of ours does this, and so every time someone connects with their organization that's a new diagnosis, they send this really cool care package just to kind of let them know that, hey, you're part of a bigger family now, and it's something kind of cool you can get involved in. It doesn't take a ton of time, but it could be fun. I kept hearing people yesterday, and Ashley and I were talking about this. We kept hearing people talk about, things that you guys are doing that's been really impactful or really helpful or that you've found to be really successful. And I just kept thinking in my head, like, man, somebody should start a list of all of this, all of these, like, hey, this worked really, really well for me. I wonder if it would work for other people, because I guarantee you, you've probably had a lot of these conversations over the past couple days, but maybe start a list of these that you've heard that you can provide to the community or to other people, just kind of like the best practices or, hey, what's worked for me. But find a creative way to show support and go with it. Again, it doesn't have to be a huge time commitment, and we're all busy, but figure out something that sounds like something you might want to do or that might be you would have felt really supported by, and see if it works. So awareness, this is probably the one that people think about most when they talk about advocacy is, spreading awareness, doing awareness events, awareness campaigns. When I was working with Richofin and Beth, and there's a community, the Siston area community, that did this really cool Snapchat campaign because they have to drink this obscene amount of water every day. It's a kidney disorder, and so they did this Snapchat about trying to drink all of this water, and it was really cool, and it can be really effective to spread awareness like that. So maybe think of something kind of unique or funny, and this is the the Ice Bucket Challenge is a great example of this, but those can be really powerful ways to spread awareness and kind of just increase what people know about Alagille syndrome or rare disease, or however you want to spin it. So those are more awareness campaigns. Host an awareness event. Rare Disease Day is a really awesome time to do an event. Do something local, do something at the school. If Alagille syndrome, I believe, has an awareness day, maybe do something then. Get your local government involved. Maybe have them do a blast about the day and that kind of stuff. But I don't know. And some of these, they can be a lot easier to do than you'd think. And again, plug to Global Genes. They have a really awesome webinar, and I want to say a toolkit on doing this kind of stuff, so check it out. And again, I love to brainstorm ideas, so never hesitate to reach out and see if we can't put something together. Educational advocacy, so again, creating materials, doing education days, hosting education events. This is something that I used to love doing. So a lot of hospitals will do grand round events, and so they'll have all of their physicians, or if they're a teaching hospital, they'll have all of their new doctors that have to get together every month or however often they do it. Figure out if you can get involved or present or talk about Alagille syndrome, because I can guarantee you a lot of these doctors have never heard of it, and it's a great way to get in front of the medical community and provide some kind of basic education and ways that they might be able to get involved as well. Again, sorry, Global Genes toolkits are amazing, and they rely on the community for the information and everything that's in those things. So if you see anything on their website about the toolkits that they have coming out for the next year, and you're like, hey, I know a lot about that topic, reach out. That is how they build those resources. So definitely check that out and get involved, wherever you think is appropriate, because I guarantee you, you know more than you think you do, and the information that you have, somebody else needs. And so figure out a way to kind of, get involved with creating education materials or resources. And finally, find your passion and go for it. Again, there's already a lot going on, right? You guys already have a lot that you're doing to kind of get through the day-to-day and move from point A to point B. And you fall into advocacy at different points in time. You heard Bruce say yesterday, it was almost 10 years after, after their son passed, that he really started to get involved. And so it happens for different people at different times. And it can happen really slowly, or you can jump right in. We've seen it every which way. But if you find something that kind of ignites a little bit of a spark, go for it, because I'm telling you, one person or a really small group can completely change the trajectory of an organization. I know that, you know, ALS, CF, those organizations that are huge, that you see everywhere, that are so supported, they started as really tiny organizations with a couple people with big ideas who, you know, had a passion for kind of making some change. How are we on time? We're good. We're okay. So at some point in time, Google That Is So Chocolate Bar. It's a really quick video, but it's probably one of the most amazing stories. It's about a young boy who had a friend with a rare disease and decided to dramatically change an outcome and raised millions of dollars with a really simple idea. And it's just the cutest little video and story. So check it out if you have some time, or if you just, you know, want to have a really nice day and smile. So again, my name's Kendall Davis. That's my email. It's very long. I apologize. But please feel free to reach out. Happy to talk to you guys about anything and everything rare disease advocacy-wise. You guys have a really wonderful community, and if there's ever anything I can do to support you individually or collectively, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much, Kendall. So, and this also goes for PFIC families. So, Emily Ventura and